Hello, government students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have your notes for Chapter 5, Section 2, the House of Representatives. So let's get started, and we're going to talk a little bit about how work gets done in the House. And for the most part, you got to look at the leadership that's there. We're going to focus a little bit on the roles of the Speaker of the House, the Majority and Minority Leader, and the whips. So we're going to start with the Speaker of the House. A Speaker of the House, for the most part, has the power to recognize or ignore members of the House who wish to speak. In other words, they hold the gavel and they can determine who gets to ask a question or who gets to introduce maybe a motion or something like that. The Speaker also gets to appoint members of some of the committees, and they get to schedule bills for action within the House, and they get to refer bills to certain committees. So it is kind of a powerful position to have. Your majority leader, this is of the political party that is in charge. So in this case right now, that would be the Democratic Party. They get to help plan their political party's legislative program. So what kind of bills does right now the Democrats want to see go through Congress? They get to steer important bills through the House. They get to make sure that committee chairs finish their work on the bills. In other words, if there's a bill that is kind of important to the well-being of our nation, they're going to be the ones putting pressure on those committee chair people to finish up the work and to get that to the floor so that they can do some voting on it. The minority leader, this would be the leader of the political party that does not have the majority of the seats in the House. Right now, that would be the Republicans. They get to help plan the party's legislative program. They make sure their committee chairs are also finishing work on bills that they think are important to their party. So in many cases, the majority and the minority leader are really doing similar things. The only difference is which political party they're doing that for. If there would ever be an election that would change the makeup as far as like which political party is in power, it's possible that the minority and majority leader just technically switch titles. And that happened here just recently in the 2018 election. The whips, these can be both majority or minority whips. They keep a watch on how party members are voting, especially on the important bills. They kind of have an idea of maybe who in their party might be in favor or might not be in favor of important legislation. And so they might go and persuade their political party member to vote a certain way. They make sure that all the members are present for votes. So they're certainly keeping tabs on what's happening, not only on the floor, but also what's happening in the daily lives of our members of Congress. Some responsibilities of the House Rules Committee. Just so you know, the House Rules Committee is a pretty prestigious committee within Congress. They determine some of the rules as far as what's going to happen, as far as how bills are introduced and such. Just so you know, the House of Representatives compared to the Senate is very complicated as far as the rules that they live by, the number of calendars. And so determining these rules is certainly kind of a prestigious committee to be on. So there are 4 responsibilities here. 1, they get to enter the major bills on the House calendars. This is to determine like when things are going to be up for debate or when things are going to be sent to committee or when they're going to come to the floor. It's possible that if you're a member of this committee, you can do something called a pigeonhole, meaning like you can take a piece of legislation that you don't like and you can push it to the back of the line so that it doesn't have a chance to get out of committee. They get to move certain bills ahead of others. A lot of this depends on need and necessity. So if you're talking about like our current situation with the COVID-19, certainly this would be kind of an important situation here where if it's a bill that's dealing with something vital to the well-being and the health of our nation, they can push that ahead of some of the other bills. They can also put in time limits for debate. And unlike the Senate, where debate really is kind of open-ended. In the House, there's a pretty tight rein on how long you get to talk on a certain bill. And a lot of times, if there isn't a lot of time for, minor bills, they might not get a lot of debate time. And finally, they get to settle any kind of dispute among House committees or block bills that are to be voted on. So again, this is one way that you can maybe put the stop on a certain political party from getting away with some type of maneuver that's going to get some legislation to favor them. As far as leadership, we mentioned a moment ago, the Speaker of the House is kind of our leader here. We have our majority leader. We also have a minority leader on the party side that's not in kind of the full dominance in the party. You also have majority and minority whips. And then finally, you have deputy whips for both the majority and the minority parties. All right. As far as getting a bill through the House, we're going to talk a little bit about the procedure of this, and eventually, when we get into Chapter 7, we're going to talk kind of how a bill becomes a law through the whole process of going through Congress. But in the House, it's a little different. One of the things that makes it different is that rather than getting up on your feet and introducing a bill like you would in the Senate, members typically will take that piece of legislation and they will drop that in what is called the hopper. Hopper is basically a basket that you put this piece of paper in or a bunch of papers in. And what happens after you put that in the basket, like turning in homework, it will be determined by the Speaker what committee it's supposed to go to, the appropriate committee. So depending on if it's like an agricultural bill or if it's a bill that deals with revenue or taxation, that will determine which committee it has to go to first. Okay, so once it gets into the committee, it's put on the House calendar, the appropriate calendar, and there's roughly 5 different calendars the House kind of functions under. And from that, once it kind of goes through maybe committee, it's going to be also put on a discharge calendar, meaning like when it's going to have to come out of committee to eventually be sent back to the floor of the House. And so if there is an issue about this legislation, the bill might have to go to a rules committee. And just so you know, there's actually kind of a joint committee that deals with some of this, especially when we have a bill that's going through both the House and the Senate at the same time. It's possible that members of the House pass a different bill than one that's going through the Senate. And what the Rules Committee is going to do is it's going to go through that bill and kind of figure out what it is that our members of Congress want to keep and what they want to get rid of. And then eventually, the bill will go to the floor and it will be debated. It might be amended and it might be brought up for a vote. And if it's made it that far, then if it hasn't already gone through the Senate, it will eventually go to the president and he will get an opportunity to determine the fate of it. Thank you very much.